Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Talking Spirit. Today we are joined by our very, very special guest. It is spiritual medium Steven Hemingway. So Steven, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
How are you? You okay?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Very excited about tonight. Very, very excited.
Yeah, like I said to you in the so as we were having a chat before the show started, like I've heard your name and heard so many good compliments about you and stuff. So that's why I'm super excited that you've agreed to come on and talk to us. It's going to be good.
Yeah, brilliant. All good stuff. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, guys, for those watching this evening, I'd say welcome. And if you do have a question for Stephen, if you'd like to put it in the comment section, and I'm sure if he won't mind answering for you, and we can ask him that question for you. So, we're going to start right back at the beginning. So, you just want to tell us a bit about yourself, Stephen, and then we can talk about your mediumship as well.
I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I originally come from Germany. I was adopted by my stepdad and my mum. I've got a big family. There's 5 of us in total. So growing up was very hectic. I speak very openly about my past. It was very tough, tough upbringing, but those experiences were a very important part of my early development, my spiritual development. I speak very openly about that, not in a sort of judgment or criticism way. So those experiences as a child was very difficult, very emotional. School was very tough. But then later on in life, I moved out from my parents very at a young age. I think I was 15. I felt like I wanted to explore the world and really become independent. And really, it went from there. Really, my life. I went to university. I went to college. Went to university. Had a career in hospitality management. That's how I started my career. Originally, I wanted to be an actor when I was younger, and then I wanted to be a doctor, but unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Spirit had other plans. You know how it all works. So I had all these ambitions about what I wanted to do, and I went to uni for the first time. It wasn't quite for me. Sort of had to find me first. I had to go out in the world, sort of in the world, and moved homes many times and lived a bit more of a physical life, not a spiritual life. That's how I really started from being 15 to about 19. I lived a very physical life because it was very sort of strict growing up in our household, very, very strict. So it was being a little bit rebellious, if you will. So that's a little bit of my sort of my physical side. And then it wasn't until I was about 19, I met my very good friend, co-founder of the Purple Mountain called Chris Stevenson. And we met out on a night out and we've been friends ever since for nearly 16, 17 years now. And we've had an amazing experience. And he actually, he said, do you fancy going to a spiritual church? And it was actually in Fleetwood, the Fleetwood Spiritualist Church there. And I've always had this intrigue about spirit, and it was more my inquisitive side. And I said, I really want to go to the Spiritualist Church. And he took me, and we went about 6 or 7 times. And every week we went, he got a message, and I didn't. And I got used to, and I got very, very annoyed with him. And I said, you keep telling these mediums before, because I couldn't work out what was really happening and how it all worked. I was very, very naive, if you will. And then till there's this medium that came to him and actually mentioned my name, and I was having really bad toothache at the time, and he actually said, tell Stephen he needs to sort his tooth out. My heart nearly stopped and I nearly fell off the chair, and I thought, hang on, there must be something here in it. And then it was the week later, very, very luckily, I was invited to a home circle by I call my first spiritual guru called Anita Williams. She's now sadly passed the spirit world, and she and her husband Roy, he's still here, very good friend of ours, and he and as a couple they invited me and Chris to a home circle, and that's really the beginning of my spiritual path. Of course, you know, your spiritual path begins the moment you're born, you know that development and that awakening. But my spiritual journey really began in that invitation to a home circle. Now, I will always speak very, very openly of the importance of home circles, open circles, development classes, awareness classes. Yeah, they're great. They give a platform for people of mediums, psychics who want to develop, wants to work with spirit, but home circles where there is no pressure. So really, me and Chris just sat in a home circle for 10 years, just sat sending out, meditating. And, there's another aspect of mediumship, which is trance mediumship. And Anita, who is our guru, who was running the circle, she was the trance medium. So every week you had very enlightened spirits, such as Joaquin Tonka, Silver Birch, that were coming through Anita and giving absolutely amazing philosophies and teachings, where we were able to ask questions. And there were absolutely amazing times. I always look back to those times where it was a great foundation. It was a great stepping stone to my development. It was all about sitting, being patient. I never had an ambition to be a medium. And actually, I started off my sort of spiritual development as a trance medium. And that's how I started off. I started off as trance mediumship before I looked into the mediumship side. And it wasn't until Anita passed, who was ultimately, she was the glue of the circle. She was the main trance medium. I was only the development medium. And it wasn't until she sadly passed the spirit world did I and Roy and the group feel that we're going to give the circle a year, see what's going to happen. Because things change, don't they? Things evolve and things change. And then myself, Roy and Chris, we went to Cleveland Spiritualist Church. And I think it was run by Paul DeLeith and Kath Noonan at the time. And we were very inquisitive. And then we met a lady called Kate, who was a physical medium. And she's the one that sort of inspired us to set our own physical mediumship circle. And so we set our own laboratory. We call it a laboratory room. So we blacked it all out. Roy, who was extremely dedicated at the time, made all the changes in his own home. He got rid of one of his bedrooms, turned it into a physical room. And that was when I started really shooting off in my development. I had different guides communicating through me, working with me spiritually, giving philosophy and teachings. On the science side, incorporating different scientific approaches to experiments, all about creating energy, all about proving without doubt spirit. And, yes, mediumship, giving messages, they are fantastic, but there are other aspects, what we call origins of spiritualism, which was the seances, the home circles. They need to be brought back, in my opinion, because there's no pressure for people's development and you develop in your own way, if that makes sense. So I've not waffled there.
No, that's absolutely fine. It's really interesting. So I do have a few questions for you. I'm making mental notes as you're saying, like, I need to assist. We do have a question here, but from Donna, but I'm going to ask this in a moment. But so when you started with your trance mediumship, see, this is always really interesting to me, especially the physical mediumship. So how did it work for you in regards to that? How did it sort of start and how did it work with yourself as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's sort of different facets to that question. So I'll sort of try to keep it simple. I'm very, very lucky where that I was in a group that I could trust. And that's very, very important, that there's a group of people, I call my family at the time, that I could trust. And remember, we need to remember as well that yes, we all gifted in our own way, but spirit also choose the right people that is able to do their work. At the end of the day, when we're not servants to spirits, there is a partnership. So remember, spirits see greatness in us that we don't see in ourselves. So in my early development, I started to develop very, very slowly. So I'll give you an example. It took me nearly an hour to go off into trance, where my mind was still resisting that vibration. So my hands were tingling, my solar plexus was twirling, I could feel my body lift. And I could admit it now, I was scared to death. I thought, what the hell is happening to my body? But I was very lucky that I had Roy and Anita in the group that very much empowered me and guided me. I was still very much aware at that time about what was happening. And that's the biggest thing in trance. And even in mediumship, you think, is it in my mind? Is it spirit? And really Spirit said, just speak the words, speak the words. And as you speak the words, the channel becomes stronger. The channel becomes stronger. So it was actually I don't know if you've heard of Rescue Circle. We started a Rescue Circle. And that's how I very early on started my trance. And it wasn't until when Anita died did I start developing a little bit deep and had other, I'd like to say, I don't want to say enlightened spirits, but more teachers then come through, then started guiding, such as a guide that works through me called Little Raven, a guy called Pacchias, and Albert as well. They're the three main guides, and a Chinese lady called Sue. So depending on what kind of work I'm doing or what kind of spirit work Spirit want me to do, depends on the teacher that is coming through. But at the early days, it was a fabulous time. And anybody starting the spiritual journey, it's an amazing feeling. I miss those early days because you feel so passionate. And you want to do the work every night and every day, and you want everybody to know what you're experiencing. It's amazing time. But looking back, I was very, very lucky that I was in the right group developing in trance. That's how I developed. So I didn't develop mediumistically till many years later. Many years later.
Yeah, I think that's, like, as we mentioned as well, it's once you find your right place or where you feel like you fit, this is because you're more relaxed, I guess, because the more uptight you are, the more pressure you feel on yourself. I guess it's putting that brick wall up. As when you're sort of content in your own sort of environment, I guess that's when you flourish the most.
Yeah, and I remember, and Chris will agree with me this as well, that when we were invited into the home circle, I remember sitting there in the first night and sat there, and I was nearly on Chris's lap, because as the breathing started to change with the trance medium Anita, and I could see the changes in her face and thinking, oh my God, what the hell is happening? I'm thinking it's like out the film Ghost. As the spirit is coming in, I thought, this is real. And I felt like this is normal. I feel like I'm at home. And it's very, very rare that people find that. And when you're in the right group, and this is why our home circle is invitation only, because it's spirit that chooses the people into the circle. You can't have anybody just joining the circle, because the harmony has to be right. And it did feel like coming home. It did feel like coming home, because it was just, and that's why the circle, our circle, has been running for 47 years. It's been running for 47 years. So over the 47 years, we've had different sitters, but ultimately it's been Roy and Nita that ran it for all that time. So 47 years of dedication is absolutely amazing.
That's phenomenal. 47 years, wow. That's awesome. It's just, imagine like all them years and all that work with spirit and the energy, and from obviously just the amount of people they've worked with must be absolutely phenomenal. Is Roy still doing the circle as well, did you say?
Roy's not involved with the circle now. He's when Anita died, you see, in a circle, people run the circle as a team. So you always have the yin and the yang. So Anita did the spiritual work, if you will. Roy did the healing, but he always called himself the laborer. He made the cup of tea. He got the circle room ready during the day. He did all the preparation, which is just as important part of the spiritual work. So they were the team. So they had the yin and the yang. But unfortunately, when Anita died, a lot of things had to change. And in a way, the group and all of us wanted the circle to remain the same. But Spirit said things all need changing. Things evolve, and we've got to embrace those changes and not to be afraid. And that's why we're very unique at the Purple Mountain, because we've always embraced the changes. And you know what? Not to be afraid that some things work, some things don't. And we found that in physical mediumship, that, you know, some weeks nothing's going to happen. It's okay. Everything's like science. Everything's an experiment. Some things work, some things don't. And not to be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we all learn. You know, we learn through the difficulty, through the difficulty. But yeah, Roy's not involved as much. He does more on the healing work, and he does like psychic art and things like that. So he's done certain events with us now.
Yeah, That's amazing. So we have our first question, which is from Donna. She has asked, how long did it take Stephen to give a spirit? I think she means that. How long did it take at first to be able to give your first message from the spirit world?
Yeah, I think, I look back to that time. So when I joined Cleveley's church, I was still in the circle.
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky that I met my second guru, which was called Kath Noonan. I love Kath Noonan to bits. And she had a very different perspective to mediumship. And I sort of didn't understand it at the time. And she was talking about inner work. So inner work, because remember, we are a projection. And like with trance mediumship, the more work you do on yourself, and this is why I always say healing, every medium should work with healing energy because it's so beneficial to your development. And that's why I always push meditation for anybody. Always try to incorporate meditation. So in the early days, I had to find who I was. And until I did, I then started giving messages. So I mainly worked in open circles. So this is why I find open circles very, very good for working mediums, because it practice makes perfect, and it takes, and don't be afraid to receive a no. So you'll get that. And I remember standing up for the first time in Fleetwood Church, and my legs were shaking, my heart was coming out my chest, and I was so scared. And really, I know no matter what I'm going to say to people, you're always going to feel those nerves, people that are going to start with their spiritual journey, particularly giving messages, but keep on going, keep working on it. So my first message was very jumbled, but I'll give you something else that at the time, my grammar, my communication skills wasn't very good. And I remember that I went to university for 3 years, and in this time, obviously, I don't use the skills that I learned at university now, because I'm not a manager. I do all holistic therapies, treatments. But spirit inspired me to go to university because I had to strengthen my communication, my presentational skills. So I'm very appreciative to what I learned there at the university that helped me maybe deliver my mediumship, my messages more professionally or strongly, if that makes sense. But that happened over time. And I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. That never changes.
Oh, that's amazing. It's I think as well, like you say, it's that, because that's one thing I struggle with, is like the nerves, and I'm sort of slowly getting over that point of like, if you get a no, it's not the end of the world, and just say what you've got. Because the issue I've had in the past is holding on to it and thinking, did I make that up myself? Or is it, because we were having that conversation. And I'm like, and rather than just say it, it's not the end of the world. If it's a no, it's a no. And I think that's one of the things I've struggled with in the past. But obviously what you're saying then, it obviously makes a lot of sense.
You have to have 100% trust in your team, your spirit team. If you question it, then that doubt can come in, and doubt's very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. As soon as you doubt, and many times I've given messages, and I'll give you an example. I do a lot of private readings, and I gave this lady 20 names. She said, I can't take any single name. I said, I know, I'm not being arrogant. I know what I'm giving you is right. And this is where you've got to trust what you're saying is right, and this we've got to trust in spirit. And anyway, she messaged me the next day. She said, every single name is in my family tree. But I didn't know. And another, I'll give you another example. I gave this lady a reading. I said, you're going to be pregnant. She went, you really upset me. I said, why? She said, I can't have children. I said, I'm sorry, your grandma saying you're going to have a baby. Anyway, I saw her about 14 months later, and she come in with the pram with the baby, and she had 2 weeks after you told me she was 42, and she said, I was pregnant.
Wow.
So you have to have trust in what spirit is saying. And sometimes when you're giving messages in an open circle or in a service, sometimes, particularly with names, and that's why I find names important, because it identifies our individuality, and it, for me, strengthens a message. Sometimes people will say no. And I remember medium saying to me, Stephen, can you take the name Annalisa or Anna? And I was like, no. And then I remember after thinking, oh my God, that's my grandmother's name. So your mind can become blank, and it happens to all of us. And that's why you've got to have that balance between what you're saying to somebody is right, because you have that trust. But also comes down to self-preparations as well, which, you know, I'm not saying this in a judgment to any working medium, but I find that pre-preparation, things like meditation, self-healing, you know, I never ever eat anything heavy before. That just blocks. For me, you know, everybody works differently, and this is why I never ever imprint, because we're all different. How you work, I work differently. We all work differently, and that's why I find in the danger in the spiritual movement that teachers should be very careful not to imprint their way on other people, because we should empower in each other's individuality. We all work in our own unique way. Spirit want us to work in our own gifted way. They don't want to replicate, nor can you replicate that gift. We all work in our own unique way, and to embrace that other side to us as well.
So we have another question here. This one's from Shirley. She put, hi, just wondered if you had a message come through that maybe contains some bad news for the recipient. Do you pass it on, or do you hold that information back?
Oh, it's a difficult question. That that doesn't normally happen in a service, because very simply, personal responsibility. Now, when you work with spirit, you know, I'll just give you a bit of an insight. So I'll be standing there on a platform, and I know who I'm working with, and that's important because I know who my guides are. And they will be communicating with people's loved ones in the audience. Now, sometimes the spirit, the loved one, mother, father, brother, they will imprint that type of personality. And sometimes you'll have a brother or sister, mum or dad, who maybe swore a lot, drank, and that's that I'll pick up on that. Now, obviously, I can't then say, you know, brother saying this and he's swearing. And so in a way, we as mediums got to be very careful how we approach that message, and how we're not changing the message, because then we're lacking personal responsibility for us. So we've got to then filter, because we are, if you will, the doorway between the spirit world and the earth plane. We are the vessel, the communicator. I say spirit doing all the hard work. So you're passing on that message to the people in the audience, and you do have to be very, very careful. Sometimes I find I will change certain words, like sometimes there'll be loved ones on the earth that are maybe ready to make their transition to spirit. So I'll say, could you understand where the lady Margaret is on the earth plane? And somebody will say, yes, that's my mum. I said, is she poorly? And she'll say, yes. And then I'll say, spirit are very much around, and they're giving the healing at this moment in time. So I can't then say she's going to go back to spirit. You know, that might be too much for that person. So I'll approach it in a different way. Or somebody that might, maybe a younger person that's committed suicide, I will change it to that maybe have died in tragic circumstances, or may have taken, you know. So it's again how we approach things. Now, in private readings, they're very, very different, because you can say a lot more in a private reading. In a church, you've got 5 minutes, 10 minutes in a service. You have to be very, very quick. In a private reading, you've got half an hour, 45 minutes, and you can say things a little bit different. Now, I'll give you an example. It has happened to this before, where I'll say, I've got grandma here, and she's saying she's seen everything. She knows exactly what's going on in your relationship, and you've got to be very, very careful. And then this lady started smiling, and she ended up having an affair with somebody different. It would come out in the reading. And it was just a reminder that, you know, that would never, ever happen if that was in front of a service. But in a private reading, it can be very, very different, because it's private. It's between you, spirit, and then that individual. But, you know, the beauty of spirit never judge. Spirit bring unconditional love to us.
Yeah.
If that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So that also brings me on, because you mentioned the churches a few times. So how did you get started working in the Spiritualist churches?
How I started working, wow, I was very, very lucky. Kath Noonan, she had a lot of connections. She was the president of Cleveley Spiritualist Church. For me, Cleveley's and Fleetwood, I always looked at a very high regard. For me, they were my sort of stepping stone where I really began my mediumship work. My other work began in the home circle. So, yeah, it's for me, Kath guided me and passed my number on to other people, to other churches. And really, it was word of mouth. And I think it's really, really important for anybody that is starting their spiritual journey. You know, get out and open circles. I think nearly every church and every center, they do open circles. So try giving messages, get yourself some little business cards if you feel confident, give them out to, the president. And for me, it was just word of mouth. I went to Cleveland's church, then Fleetwood Church, and then I went to Blackpool Church, and then I went to Blackburn, Burnley, Horwich, and then I got invited to go to Ireland a couple of times. I went to the Isle of Man. And it was just all through word of mouth, just people recommending me. So I've met some very, very generous, very, very kind people, and I'll always be very, very humble. I really, really am. And really what also gets your name out there is private readings, doing one-to-one readings. That really gets you out there as well, and gets your name out there. But people got to be very, very careful, because the word ego often creeps in. And I've seen this with a lot of other spirit workers. And it is, ego is there to protect us. It's nothing to fear. The ego is there to challenge us. It's there as part of our learning. The ego has been created by the creator for a reason, as part of our learning. So it's not to be feared. But the ego will always be there. And you find people, and I was very lucky, because I had lots of friends who kept me grounded. Because, you'll have a lot of people say, you're fantastic, you're amazing. And it can get to your head. You feel like top of the world, and you feel, wow, this is amazing. But you've always got to keep yourself grounded at all times, because as bigger you are, the harder you fall. You've always got to remain humble, positive, always keep yourself grounded, because I've seen so many beautiful light workers, mediums, that fall into that trap of the ego. But it's all part of learning, and we're not here to judge, are we? So
No, absolutely. It's like I'm a singer as well, so I see that in a lot of my job as well. But yeah, funnily enough, we had Anne Fabian the other day, and she mentioned the same along the same lines about ego, about you sort of need that ego just to be able to stand up, but then he's taking it too far, where, like you say.
yeah.
And my granddad always, this is why I guess I'm the way I am as well. My granddad always used to say, it goes in one ear, out the other, and keeping yourself grounded. Like don't fly your kite too high kind of thing. And it's always resonated with me, that. And the thing is, obviously, when you're doing this and working with spirit and working with people, it's it's that you're there to help people. It's, I wouldn't use it to think, oh, I'm now going to be the next best thing. It's because I struggled when I've lost loved ones, and if I can give someone else that evidence there and that help they need, and they can walk out of that reading, that church service, and go, wow, I really needed that, and I know they're around me, and that's job done there, and that's what I think resonates.
Absolutely. Your granddad seemed to be a very, very wise man with his
very old school.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what's needed. The old ways is needed, but also certain old ways also needs to go, where things need modernizing, things need changing. And you see that in the spiritual movement as a whole. You see in that. And I think there is a big fear at the moment, particularly in churches, where, people aren't getting the number of congregation into the churches, where maybe certain centers are thriving than others. And I think things change. Many very famous mediums, Gordon Higginson, who was the president of the SNU for a long time, spoke about it at great length. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. He said the churches will eventually go, because it's the spirit modernizers. There's a lot more highly enlightened spirits coming back that are longing for more. and not to be frightened for those changes, for that evolution. You know, when we talk about things like mind, body, and spirit, we talk about, you know, paranormal, you know, the work that you do, physical mediumship, that is not often really talked about, that is forgotten, that also quintessentially important part of the spiritual work as well. Trance mediumship, physical mediumship, psychic art. You know, there's a huge spectrum of mediumship, spiritual work, that is often, I feel, suppressed or forgotten, that it's really, really forgotten in the spiritual movement. Anyway, I've waffled on.
No,
there,
that's fine. No, it's really interesting. Talking on physical mediumship, because I have so many questions for you. They're all floating around in my mind. There's two things I want to ask you. So the first one is physical mediumship before we get back to the churches. And that is one of the things I've always wanted to see. I've never been lucky enough to be able to physically see it. But what was one of your sort of standout moments in witnessing someone do physical mediumship?
Wow, we're very, very lucky, because my friend Chris, who we run the Purple Mountain together, he's actually a physical medium. He's a physical medium, and we created what we call a physical laboratory room. We don't have any more, but unfortunately, physical mediumship requires the most strongest of sitters, the most dedicated, devoted of sitters. And unfortunately, with the modern spirit, there isn't as much of that dedication, unfortunately, sadly. Maybe that will change in the future. So it's all about energy creation. Some of the photographs, and I would love to share that with you. I'll send you a few we've got hundreds of pictures of probably the most amazing night that I've ever experienced with Chris was the creation of the early stages of what the modern term of ectoplasmic energy. And that was created by our spirit team from friends from other worlds. And we saw evidence in pictures on a basic camera, and the face changing. You see people's loved one's face. You see what we call string energy, faces and orbs. Amazing experience. And I mean, how can you disprove what you see? And really, physical mediumship is that everybody in that room sees exactly what you're seeing. So it's not in the third eye, you're actually physically seeing it. Wow. And we run in the winter more, because it's more, for me, more winter work when it's very dark.
Yeah,
because the darker the room, the better, the more you see. We run seances where we do things like table tipping, and we create energy and things like that. So, you know, it's part of the spiritual work that isn't talked about, that really is the heritage of the modern spiritualism. Seances and home circles. That's how our ancestors started this movement, through physical manifestation of spirit.
Yeah. Do you think as well, it's obviously, I know things progress. Do you think it's because the world's that fast now? Everyone's got a phone, you know, the Wi-Fi is at the center of everything, and the world's that busy. Do you think that's one of the reasons why it's taking people now longer to want to develop, if they wanted to work with physical mediumship?
Yeah, and I think it's hard, you know. I'm not saying this in a judgment, just as an observation. I think there's probably two facets to that. One, there isn't the platform, I feel, for a lot of people to go. And I think the spiritual movement is more than just giving a message. Just to give you an example, philosophy. A lot of people don't do philosophy because people think philosophy is boring. And actually, how I overcome philosophy is I've got hundreds of poems, inspirational poems, that I read out before my service, and that people love it. So it's a modern way. You can modernize philosophy in your own unique way so that people can relate to it. Like music. People don't want to sit there listening to music that's 300 years old. People want to listen to modern music. That's not going to change the vibrations of a church or center. So we've got to modernize. A lot of churches are now, particularly Burnley and other churches, are looking at mind, body, and spirit. And I think it's absolutely amazing. It's a modern way of bringing crystal healing, different aspects of mediumship, psychic art into the fold, the backbone of our heritage. And I think, yeah, on the other side, on the human side, you have a lot of people, I find, particularly younger people, that they're very busy. They've got 2 jobs, they've got children. And that's why you find a lot of people that really end up beginning their spiritual journey. Now, I was very lucky because I started at 19. And I know that in my divine purpose, I've never meant to have children in this life, because it would have been a distraction to me. It would have been a distraction to me personally. And people that are sort of in their 40s, in their 50s, you find that that's when they start their spiritual journey, is because the children are moving out. They've got a little bit more disposable income. They can dedicate a little bit more of their time. So Spirit understand. I remember one of our main teachers called Malachi. He come through very early on, and he didn't understand why we needed money. You know, even an enlightened being like that, sometimes Spirit forget, you know, when they drift off in a very beautiful part of the spirit world, they forget the hardships of the world. And we do live, sadly, we live in the material world. We have to charge for our time, and we have to pay for things. So again, that balance. But a lot of people struggle for that commitment and that devotion. But I feel that could possibly change. And I feel there's a big change occurring in the world today. People are awakening more. And I feel people personally are looking for more. They're looking for more than just receiving a message from grandma or from dad. They're looking for more. They're looking for self-development. They're looking for healing. They're looking for helping the world, saving the world. So they're looking at connecting with crystals, and they want to learn about chakras. And I think if we create too many rules to Spirit, that really hinders people's gifts. And really, our job is to create, really, you know, me and Chris created the Purple Mountain. We're not there we create a sacred space. So anybody that are caretakers, all they're doing is they're creating a sacred space for people to come. Any church center, all you're doing is creating a sacred space for Spirit to work. You're not there to create rules. Yeah, you need physical rules. You need personal responsibility. Yeah, you need to prepare the room and things like that. Yeah, so that's my little bit perspective there.
No, that's awesome. So I want to go back now because I said I had 2 questions. Was back about the spiritualist churches. So obviously you got the opportunity, but did you know yourself you was ready to be able to take that next step, or was it just let's go out and obviously Spirit, you've got that much trust, you just know that it's going to just light up and you'll be fine?
Yeah, for me, I didn't really question it. I was very lucky because it sort of, I learned this very earlier on in just sitting and meditating in our home circle. Really go with the flow, and everything should work effortless. Nothing should be hard work. Yeah, you have your difficulty, you have your nervous moment. You feel like, oh, I can't do the service. And you think, oh my God, what am I doing? It's in my head. I've been through every aspect of anything that anybody could think of. I've gone through. Having to run to the toilet before, being nervous. Now, I don't feel as nervous because I have that 100% trust in Spirit. But I never, ever take anything for granted. Because once you do become complacent, you can lose that link. So really, in the early days in my mediumship, and, you know, getting to churches, remember, you're a team with Spirit, and you'll be part of a divine purpose. And what I mean by that is that Spirit know exactly where you need to be, and let Spirit guide you. You don't, the angels, guides, inspirers, your Spirit team will be behind you. They'll be guiding you, and you'll get the work. You'll be guided to the churches. You'll get the readings. I advertise my readings sometimes, but a lot of it is word of mouth, and I don't push it. Just be guided. You'll be guided where the Spirit work is needed, if that makes sense. So I've never sort of forced it or expected it, because my friends always kept me very, very humble and kept me very, very grounded. Luckily, still keep me grounded now, as I keep my friends grounded as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We have a question here from Chris. So he has put, I believe that my spirit guide is finally starting to show himself to me, but it's through my wife, Claire. How can I forge a strong bond with him myself?
For me, I will always be a very, very strong advocate of meditation. Now, meditation, there's different forms of meditation. There's meditation for you, meditation for healing. I would say try to devote. I move away from the word discipline because I find discipline a little bit of a negative word. I devote, Chris, devote a little bit of your time every single day, even if it's 15 minutes every single day, sitting, have a bit of a candle on, a bit of nice meditation music on, and sit and say, and open up with a bit of a prayer and just say, I want to connect with my one true spirit guide, with you one true spirit guide. Now, in my belief, I don't want to imprint my belief because it's just what I believe, that you have one true spirit guide that elects to walk with you since birth. All your others are teachers, inspirers, and helpers. So I've got one, for me, example, my guide's called Chi Chang Lee, and he's walked with me since birth, and he'll be with me until I go back to spirit. Now, my clairvoyant teachers and helpers, they can change because remember, we evolve, we change, we evolve as well. So as I evolve, the teachers that were teaching me have given all they can. So other teachers will step in and teach me new things or guide me with new things with my new lessons. So really with you, Chris, is to meditate and look. I always say, I remember when I was at school, I had a friend. He was very lazy, but naturally intelligent, never did any studying, turned up and got top grades, A star. Me, I had to study 3 hours every night just to get the grades. Some people are naturally gifted that don't have to prepare, don't have to meditate. They've just got such a natural link to spirit that their intuition so strong that they don't have to prepare. For me, I like my preparation. I like to meditate before. I like to eat what I eat before and prepare, meditate, bathe, and maybe wear some crystals. So I have to do my 50%. I have a ritual that works for me, but meditation is very, very, very powerful, Chris. So I recommend meditating.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always struggled with. It's just I need more discipline myself, to be honest. You know, to actually say, right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Because I remember I mentioned this gentleman on my last podcast, which was Derek Okora, and I got the privilege to meet and have a private reading with him. And that was one of the things he was telling me about meditating. He said, even if you just spend 10 minutes of your day, just sit there, you know, and just have that, cleanse your mind. Because he had a room in his house where, you know, he could take himself, and which is the room I'm in now. This is where I do all my work from. I'm like, I really should discipline myself a bit more, to be honest. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Like for yourself, do you think? Because I know obviously the more times you do it, it naturally becomes what's the word? It becomes that's like a habit, doesn't it? But for yourself, do you naturally just fall into that meditation, and it's just naturally what you do?
I think it depends on the level of work I'm doing or what's been going on in my spiritual work at that time. It's like today I did a lot of private readings this morning, and I could feel that I sort of, it's not just pre-preparations, but what you do after, sort of closing down. I know there is a misconception about opening and closing. I sort of don't do that in my services because I feel that my spirit team do that anyway. You know, you can't think about everything, can you? You just have to do what you can. But it doesn't come naturally. I think it depends on what mood I'm feeling. And sometimes I've had a bit of a hectic week, a physical week, where at the end of the day, we're spirit in a physical body. We've got physical jobs. We've got housework. We've got partners. We've got family. And sometimes that can create a bit negative energy in our life. And we've got to meditate through that sometimes. Sometimes you can have a really good week. You can go for, sometimes I love going for a walk in nature. That's my meditation. I like swimming and things like that. So there are other aspects we call walking meditation, Zen meditation. But I do feel that if I don't meditate every day for an hour, I do feel it doesn't affect my link, but I feel like I have to work harder because sadly, I can be very much in the mind. And when my spirit is too much in the mind, that link isn't as strong as it could be. So all I'm doing is just changing my vibrations in my meditation, allowing spirit to draw close so that it's clear. So it's a clear, strong link. Very simply, when you're giving messages, it shouldn't be hard work. It should flow like water. It should be bang, bang, bang. This is what spirit want to say. And if there is hard work, if it is hard work, you know, you heard that expression probably, pulling teeth. It shouldn't be like pulling teeth. And sometimes in the early days, very simply, sometimes mediums wasn't allowed to be on the platform for 7-8 years. They had 8 years, 10 years of development. So why rush? There is that sort of, you know, that feeling of rushing. Take your time. You develop. If you develop in 10 years, you would develop. I'd rather wait till I'm fully ready before standing up giving a message, because you want to be right. You're not about being the best. It's not about being the best. It's about having a strong link to spirit. And that's why I find with people that do practice meditation, that do work on themselves, that do inner work, have a stronger link to spirit personally. Not always, but personally.
Yeah, I totally understand. I didn't even think about that. Just going for a walk and just putting your earphones in and sort of meditating that way. Because to me, I always envision I'm going to sit in this room, put some music on, and maybe chill out for 20 minutes. But you know, I need to start walking my dog more anyway. So that's a perfect time. So I'm gonna make sure I do that next time. But I think one thing what works for me, because someone else mentioned meditation, is the guided meditations. That helps me, especially if your mind's a bit overactive. Because sometimes I start thinking about what I'm having for tea. You know, if I'm having a meditation in the morning. So I find they really work well for me. What about yourself? Do you have any specific kind of music, or is there anything specifically you do when you're doing your meditation?
Again, I have different types of meditation.
Yeah.
I have sleep problems, so I meditate for about half an hour, 40 minutes every single night, and it's the only thing that helps me drift off to sleep. So I use the practice of meditation. So I specifically, because it's all about intention, isn't it? About setting your intention. So when you set your intention, I sometimes will say, right, before reading, I've got half an hour to spare. I'll sit in my meditation room, in my reading room, and I say, right, spirit, I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to sit with spirit. So my intention is to sit with spirit. Sometimes I'll have meditations where I think I need some healing. I need a meditation and I need to receive. And that's why a lot of mediums, I like to touch upon this actually, where to be very, very careful, because I fell into trap of this. You can't always give. You've got to receive as well. It's about that union, receiving and giving. Don't burn yourself out. And I did that in the early days. I did 5 services. I had a full-time job. I went to uni, and then I did 5 services a week. And sometimes I did 2 services a night. And what I did was burnt myself out. Remember, your core energy has to last a lifetime. You're not going to, that core energy is not going to be given back. So what you do with it in your life depends on you. And that's one of my lessons in this life. Don't rush. Slow down, Stephen. Share your gifts with grace. Slow down. You'll be guided. So I had to learn the hard way. You know, when you look at mediums and say, look, that's fabulous medium. They've got such a good link. But they don't see the hardship. They don't see the lessons and the pain and the suffering that we've all have to go through. Like, medium's life's not easy. So really going back to your question there about meditation, I find that yesterday I listened to a guided meditation by Jill Harrison, and she does a lot of angelic meditation. So I feel like I just got this impression. I want to connect a little bit more with my angels. I'm going to and really I'm guided by my intuition. And then maybe in a couple of months, I'm really into silent meditation. So while I don't have any music, no guided meditation, I'll just sit there in silence, which I could never do in the past because I always need something to guide me. So yeah, it again depends on what you need at that time. You know, you have good days, bad days. Maybe you need a healing meditation. Sometimes you need to strengthen your link. Sometimes different guides, new guides will step in, and you might have to adjust your vibrations. So again, really, anybody listening, trust your intuition. Your intuition is the most amazing compass. Yeah, you know, in our development, we'll find gurus, we have helpers and inspirers that help us on our journey. But your greatest teacher is yourself. We are our own greatest teacher. No one's going to teach you more. And really, teachers don't teach you nothing. I can't teach you nothing. All we're creating is a space for you to remember who you are, because the gift's within you. All you're doing is you're remembering. You know, I'm not giving you anything that you don't already have in yourself.
I never even thought about looking at it that way. That's mental. It's my brain's got like all this information's going in. It's going, oh, this is amazing. Honestly, Stephen, I'm absolutely loving this, as everyone else is. The love arts in the comments. It's so fascinating. Like you're saying, the knowledge you do have is like unbelievable. And is it? I guess obviously a lot of it is through experience. And I guess, like you say, we're going along the way. But one of the questions you mentioned about sometimes new guides coming in. Have you ever had one of them situations where you've done a reading or a service where you've got up there and things have completely changed to how you normally do work?
Yeah, and remember, your guides, your teachers aren't going to step in and suddenly change the vibrations, A, without your permission, or B, sometimes teachers are there to teach us very important hard lessons as well. Where I remember doing a service at Fleetwood Church, and you know, as I began my journey giving messages, I felt that, wow, I work a bit different tonight. And then there was somebody in the audience, some also working medium, that said, you've got somebody new working with you. And I felt that change. And I think, you know, you will change your vibrations. You do change. We evolve. You know, as mediums, our learning never stops. Any medium that thinks, well, that's it now, well, you're greatly mistaken. You never, ever stop learning. Your learning continues to the day you die. You never, ever stop learning. And as you progress, different your clairvoyant guides will change as well, depending on the nature of your work. I find with myself that I've done a lot of what I call plant medicine work, a lot of inner healing work, a lot of my childhood trauma that maybe have anchored me, and you find also, you can go very deep in this, you find that mediums sometimes can give their own messages, where you find that when people have not done work, what I mean by that is inner healing work. So let's say if we carry trauma from our childhood, we can project that and mirror that to other partners we choose. And if you've not done the inner work on yourself, then sometimes that can seep into the messages you give to other people. And I've seen that out and about as well, where people have to be very careful. And this is why it's a huge, huge responsibility being a medium, because you're changing people's lives. I've seen it for myself. I've seen people changing their religion, moving away from a toxic relationship. It's life-changing things. So you've got to work on yourself. And the more you work on yourself, the stronger link, the more of a clearer vessel you become between you and your spirit team, in my opinion. And that's why a lot of the work for me is changing. And that's why I find that the past sort of 2-3 years through COVID, I find where I've not been able to do services has given me a great opportunity. A lot of people see the opportunity as very negative, and actually as mediums, it's been a great for us, because it's given us chance to rest, to do inner work, meditate, reconnect back to our roots. And for me, again, I'm beginning to change a bit, because the human spirit is changing. People are longing for more. Yes, that proof. That physical proof is always important. That should always be the core, because you're proving spirit. That should always be the core. But the substance of the message is beginning to change, where there could be more teaching, there could be more inspiration, there could be guidance involved in that. And I find that I'm bringing that in a lot more, because people need that more than ever.
Yeah, so that sort of totally makes sense. With yourself as well on the working level, I did mean to ask you this at the beginning. Is it, do you work on like clairvoyant, clairaudient, sentient? How does it work for yourself? Do you physically see spirit?
Yeah, it's interesting because I never got into all the clairs. I call it all the clairs
Yeah.
because I can't remember all of them. Now, I feel a bit ignorant, but I never thought, I've never identified myself in the way I work. I thought about it and I thought, how do I work? And Spirit said, you just work the way you work. And some people, maybe it's the inquisitive side to our ego side that wants to sort of know, where that message or how that message is relayed. And it really comes down to who you are. Now, the only way I explain it is I don't really see spirit. Mine's more on feeling. Mine's more clear knowing. It's more than knowing. And I find also that my own lifetime experiences has been very, very valuable part of my learning and my readings, because I find that today I did quite a few readings that was very similar about mum and dad breakup and a lot of childhood trauma. And I could relate to that. I've got that empathy because I've gone through that myself. So you end up doing similar work because I have that understanding. So when spirit draw close, I know that feeling because I've gone through that experience. And this is why mediums, I say to anybody, get there in the world, experience as much as you can, stumble, fall, make mistakes, learn, love, get out there in the world. Your experiences is what gives you the knowledge. Everybody can read a book. Anybody can read a training book. Everybody can read a tarot card book, but it's your experiences that are so valuable part of your spiritual development, not just in this life, but all your other lives. So I hope sort of answered that question for you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. One thing I'd been meaning to ask you, I meant to ask you this before. I was looking at the picture behind you. Is that one of your spirit guides? What is the meaning behind that? I'm pointing, but you don't even know I'm there pointing at my screen. The picture behind you.
Yeah, see, I try to live my life by, I maybe sounds this a bit of fantasy, but I try to live my life through my intuition. And just before Christmas, I thought, you know what? And there's a lady called Gillian Beveridge. Now, she's absolutely amazing spiritual artist. She's come and did demonstrations at the Purple Mountains. So anybody is interested in having, you get a picture, a spirit picture, and I did an 8-page reading with it as well. And I thought at Christmas, this was just Christmas just gone, I thought, I'm going to treat myself. I don't treat myself. I'm going to treat myself to this reading, to have this picture. And I received it, and absolutely amazing, because the past 2 or 3 months, I've been doing a lot of sort of karmic earth healing work. And so I've been connecting to friends from other worlds. Now people think, oh my God, aliens and friends and stuff like that. Now we're in spirit, we're all friends, we're all brothers and sisters. It's just the physical that makes us different. And then when I received the reading and this friend from other world, it just shown me to say, what you've been picking up, Steve, and what you've been seeing is correct. So it was validating my experience. And I thought, I was nearly fell off my chair when I received the package through the post and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. Wow. Now his name, he comes from a planet called Andromeda, and very long blonde hair. Mm-hmm. They're about 7 foot tall, and they are a group of beings. Obviously there's universal law, because you can't have spirit interfere. They can't have spirit interfere in Earth's business. But as empaths, we know that the Earth is going through a huge transformation, through a massive awakening. And a lot of us have come back to the Earth at this time to help awaken the Earth from a very heavy distortion to more of a higher level of energy. Now, there are friends from other worlds. They have to be very careful. They will step in and they will assist us, the human race. And he works with me in my healing work and in my when we talk about ley lines and we're talking about portals and things like that. So he works with me in not my mediumship work, but he works with me in my other work. Because it's not just mediumship. I work, my other work, tarot cards, angel cards, and then I've got different workers for my trance work. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. It's I was watching something not even that long ago, and it was about sort of beings from other worlds kind of thing. And like some people are brought to the earth from like these specific like races in that sense. And it's cool to speak to someone who's had that similar experience to what obviously I've seen online as well. So that's really cool. I'll have to. Do you know? Are they still doing these readings? Just what you mentioned.
Yeah.
You have to send me the link.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. I think she's got a few places left in April or May, so she does like different discounts. But she's absolutely amazing. Awesome. Very, and she will connect. I treated to my friend Chris for a spirit portrait, and that was absolutely amazing as well.
Oh wow! So you mentioned there's a few more things obviously before we end tonight. A tarot card. So what do you use in your private readings? Is it angel cards, tarot cards, and a few different things?
Well, the way I work in private readings, I work again about my intuition. So when you get into this work, when you get into tarot cards and angel cards, I must have my friend Chris, if he's watching tonight, probably thinking I've got about 30 packs of tarot cards and angel cards. I don't work with the tarot card, though I have an amazing affinity to tarot cards. I mainly use with oracle cards and angel cards. I divide my reading into two parts in the private reading. The first part is to make the initial link, so bringing in loved ones. And then I always ask the client to choose 3 packs of cards and to choose 3 cards in each of the pack. And then in the second part of the reading, I work with some of the cards. And then if there is time at the end of the reading, but this is rare because I always say to people, the questions you come with are normally answered anyway in the reading. Spirit know us more than we know ourselves. So, and then at the end, we do some angel card answers if they still have got questions at the end. So that's how I work. I've worked like that for a very, very long time. I know my friend Chris, who works at the gift shop, he does readings there. He works with the tarot, so he's got more of affinity with the tarot. I've got more of the affinity with the oracle card or the angel card, which are, for me, a little bit easier to use. Chris has probably got a better link with the tarot card than I have.
No, I understand that because they were here next to me. So after my granddad passed, my mum gave me his suitcase, which had obviously all his cards in and one of his crystal balls and stuff like that. And I did not have a clue how to read. I'll show you one of the cards because they're old. I think 70s he must have got them. So you can, they're very old school cards. You know what I mean? These have been around a hell of a long time. And I didn't have a clue how to read them. And I'm like, how can I work with these? So I ended up buying myself, I don't know where they are, but I did buy myself some angel cards just because when you're looking in the picture, it does make it easier to read. And then it wasn't until I spoke to one of my friends and she was on about that instinct and that intuition. And then I thought, right, I'll start working into them now. And then from that moment, just that bit of advice, it seems to just flick something on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, now I understand where I'm going. But one of the questions we do have, which I'm going to make this the final question of the night. So, Stephen, of course, thank you so much for taking your time out. This has been absolutely amazing, so interesting. We'll have to get you on again. We'll have to do a part 2. There is so much I need to ask you. There's so many questions. But this is from Chris. And Chris was on our first episode. He has asked, have you ever astral projected yourself at all?
Well, I always say, Chris, you've asked me the question to be prepared for the answer. That's what I say. One thing that is something that happens to me very, very regularly is I remember my dreams very, very vividly. Now, we all know when we sleep, we go to a place called the astral plane. There's the spirit world and then the astral plane and the earth plane. It's another level of consciousness. Some people will astral travel. Some people won't. Now, astral traveling is something that that happens when you are sleeping. It's a natural process. Astral projection is an unnatural process and can be dangerous, unsafe if you aren't with the right people because you don't have that physical protection of the body. Now, That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Who's to say what I'm saying is right? It's just my own thoughts, what we've been taught in our home circle a very, very long time ago. Have I astral projected? What's happened before? It's not astral projection. I've had out-of-body experiences, and I absolutely scared myself to death. And I jumped back in my body thinking, I'm never going to do this again. So there's a bit of fear in me. So I've never done it. I know a couple of my friends have astral projected, and they've had amazing where they're able to actually go to different places in the world, and actually it's happening in the real time. You know, they're projecting their own spirit out in that physical vibration. But I wouldn't recommend it, because I also say, what's your intention? Why would you want to do it? If that makes sense. What is people's intention? You can do that when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes when you have deja vu, not all the time, when you have deja vu, you think, you know, you might be looking to buy a house, or you might be, you know, you've got children and you want to take them to this new school, and you're like, oh, something, I've been here before. I don't know why, but I've been here before. I'm sure we've all experienced that before. And it's because you have, on the astral plane, you visited that place. It's just that you didn't really remember. Now, some of us have got a better memory, and some of us are allowed to remember. And so when we wake up, we call what we call astral memory. So an astral memory is more than a dream. Your dreams will eventually go, don't they? You know, you remember a dream. You don't all remember your dreams because the dream eventually go. But when you have an astral memory, it's like an astral projection. You remember it like we're speaking now, and you remember it in 30 years, 40 years. I had an astral memory last week of my mother and my friend Margaret that died about 4 months ago. And the dream was so real, so emotional. I woke up and I couldn't sleep for 3 hours after. I can remember it like I'm having the conversation now. And that was an astral memory. It happened, and I was allowed to remember that. So there's different variations. I hope I've answered that, Chris.
No, I was talking about this the other week as well, about these dreams, or this, like you say, of, you know, when it's not a dream because it's that real and it resonates that much. And like you say, and you've explained it, like, it makes so much sense, even more than sort of obviously the experience. But it is crazy when you wake up after that experience of like, that I know that happened. You know, in your heart, you know exactly how that felt. Absolutely.
Yeah,
beautiful.
you don't. This is why I say to people, you know, at the end of the day, these experiences that we're all going through, you know, even as a medium, they're your experiences. And often, you know, when we say to partners, when we say to family, oh, look, often we get ridiculed, and then we feel, oh, I'm doubting myself now. I feel a bit deflated. And I always say to people, I've experienced that. I know that's real because I've gone through that. I've seen it. I felt it. I don't need anybody's opinion on it because I know that I've experienced that. I know that's true.
Yeah.
And that's why you've got to stand in your truth, stand in your beliefs at all times.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much again, Stephen, for taking your time out and being a part of the show. And like
Thank you.
everyone said on the comments, everyone's absolutely enjoyed it. And if I could, I'd keep you here for a couple more hours. We definitely have to sort something out. And guys, thank you so much for obviously all your comments tonight. I know we missed a few, but we'll definitely sort something out with Stephen again for him to join us and give us more insight. And I'm definitely going to come. I said I'm going to come to Fleetwood, and I'll definitely have to bob in and see the shop.
Yeah,
and
that'd be amazing.
Have you got any upcoming events? And also, where can people find you as well on social media if they want to book with you?
On social media, I'm mainly got my spiritual mediumship page on Facebook, Steven Hemingway Spiritual Medium. But also, majority of my work is with Chris Stevenson at the Purple Mountain. So if you like our page, the Purple Mountain Spiritual Centre in Fleetwood, it's a hub, it's a centre, and we do lots of different events. There's an event coming up that I'm doing, a Deb Brooks and Jean and one woman only event. So if you'd like to get tickets for that, me and Chris are doing mediumship together. I'm doing private readings. So if anybody would like to contact me, I'm more than happy to help and guide you. But the Purple Mountain Spiritual Centre or Stephen Hemingway Spiritual Medium, all on Facebook.
That is amazing. I'll get them shared on our social media as well so people can find you.
Thank you.
So again, thank you so much, guys. This has been an absolutely amazing episode, and thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Again, thank you, Steven. Love and light. All the very best, everyone, and see you all soon. Thank you.